this would be a change. This would be a very nice change. I heard a guy say today, and I told him, "Don't. That's not a nice thing to say." But he said, I found out why we have an oil crisis in the country, and we've got oil in Western Canada, oil in Atlantic Canada, oil in Newfoundland, oil in the north. He said, I know why we've got a crisis. And I said, why? He said, because the dipstick's in Ottawa. Now, I would never tell that joke, and because your mom can't repeat it. But it underlined the truth. You want a prime minister who knows what they're talking about. Leslyn Lewis has degrees in everything from energy policy, environmental policy, business administration, a doctorate in law. Folks, she is the most learned person on this tour in this race, and more so than the Prime Minister, and she doesn't brag about it. She just takes what she's learned and puts it to work. And we like that about her. And talking about putting things to work. Again, I don't begrudge the fact that our Prime Minister lives in luxury and never really had to work for it, really work hard for it. Here we have a woman who knows what it is to build a business from the start, knows what it is to have to meet payroll for families who will go hungry if the business isn't successful, to get up early every morning, go to bed late at night, wanting to make that payroll. Folks, when you hear a Prime Minister who says that business people, especially small business people, are just in it so they can hide their taxes, unfortunately, we can't hide our taxes. He takes most of them. But here's a woman who's paid her taxes and paid her dues and did it the hard and honest way. Isn't that what you'd like to see in the Prime Minister's office? Some people have even said, you know, is she tough enough? Is she tough enough? Leslyn, I think you've been running that law firm for just under 20 years, I think. Folks, picture this. How would you like to get up every morning and go to work and work with a bunch of hungry lawyers every single day? That builds toughness. We've got a woman here who understands that. We also have a woman here who's a woman of faith and is not afraid when she's asked about that faith to speak about it. Don't you want somebody like that in Ottawa? She respects all faiths, but she also says that your faith should be respected too. Ladies and gentlemen, it's officially MP Dr. Leslyn Lewis, but she tells us we can call her Leslyn. Ladies and gentlemen, would you give a hand, with your help, for the next Prime Minister of Canada, Dr. MP Leslyn Lewis.
I had to get that off or else you'd say I wasn't tough enough, so I made sure I pulled it off. This is great. What an introduction. With an introduction like that, I don't even need to really say much about myself. So I'm just going to delve right into it. And I'm going to leave some time for questions because I want to hear what's on your heart. And I'm going to do what politicians don't do. I'm going to answer your questions. So I've been traveling around the country, and the question that I'm asked all the time is, why are you going to do this again? You entered the race in 2020, and here you are doing it again. And the truth is, the reason why I entered the race in 2020, so many of those reasons are still there, but now they are magnified. The fabric of our nation is being torn apart. Provinces like Alberta are still threatening to leave our great confederation. Debt is piling up to the tune of $1.2 trillion. Every single day, we pay interest payments of $140 million a day. How many of you have watched Oprah? Do you know about Oprah? Do you remember that meme that she has when she gives a car to everybody? Well, I'm telling you, You owe 31,000. You owe 31,000. You owe 31,000. You owe 31,000. And all of your children have their share of debt of 31,000. And this is before they even enter the workforce. Think of what we have done to future generations. We have saddled future generations with debt. We need to turn things around. We need to create hope for future generations. And I believe that I'm the person that can restore hope and prosperity to this nation. The social divides have been so wide in the last 2 years. I am speaking to people, and when I hear their stories, you can see the trauma that Canadians have endured. And the biggest manifestation of that was seen through the trucker convoy. Now, I don't know where you stand on that issue, and it doesn't matter. What we saw happen is symbolic of a fracture in our democracy. I lived 1 block away from where the truckers parked in front of Parliament. And watching the news, I can tell you that the first day I had to walk through, I didn't know what I was going to expect. Because the news, the coverage was like our country was under siege. There were acts of sedition being committed. These people were, and so when I walked through, I said, no, I'm going to stop and I'm going to listen and I'm going to talk to these Canadians because they are paying my salary. And it felt good to have a salary that someone else is paying. Usually I was paying my own salary as a lawyer. So these Canadians are paying my salary and I am not going to listen to them? I said no, and I stopped and I had conversations with them. And I believe that that was a missed opportunity on behalf of our Prime Minister. These were hardworking Canadians who were labeled as misogynist, racist, demonized. And this is what we have done with canceled culture. We have erased what makes us truly Canadian. When I was growing up in this country, you were taught to be proud of your country. You were taught that your Canadian identity is something that is envied around the world. We were once the beacon of hope and opportunity for everyone around the world. And now in our schools, our children are taught to erase their history. I'm not saying that we have a perfect country. We don't. And we've made mistakes. But we can learn from our mistakes and we can build on that. And if we erase our history, if we erase our heroes, we are doomed to make the same mistakes in the future. Now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 2020 leadership race. Sometimes I would walk in a room and the people would laugh at the beginning. People thought, who does she think she is? She's not even going to get any votes. And I said to myself, I knew that I had a calling to enter politics. And I knew when I saw Andrew Scheer running from reporters because he didn't want to talk about being pro-life, I said, there's a role. And I'm going to enter politics, and I'm going to let everybody know I'm a person of faith, and I am pro-life. And that, I can tell you, courage becomes contagious. People were starting to say, that's okay. Even if someone is pro-choice, we can have conversations. When I entered politics, when I ran for the leadership, it was always that debate was over. And I would say, no, any debate in a democracy should be open. That's what a democracy is. It's a plurality of voices, and we can each have our own opinion on something and still find something that we agree to. So I eventually won the popular vote. I got more votes than all of the other politicians. And I wasn't even an MP at that time. And I did that by building bridges. Even something like pro-life, I said, what do we agree on? Do we agree that pregnancy care centers should be there for women who make choices, that they may find themselves in a situation where they have an unwanted pregnancy, and they may do something so compassionate as saying, I'm going to give this child up for adoption to a loving family. When our adoptions lists are so long in this country, should we not be there for women who make those choices? And guess what? The majority of Canadians agree with that. So here we have some commonality. And I believe that the next leader of this country should be a bridge builder. And I am that person that can build those bridges. I think it's so important that we aspire to make sure that our children have a future. I'm running to be that hope. When I think of the fact that the average home in this country is $1.1 million, I think of the young people who their future, they're thinking of they may never own a home because of out of control inflation and the unaffordability of ever being able to secure that down payment. I want to bring back hope to them. I want to make sure that when they graduate, they're not competing with their fathers and their uncles and their aunts for their jobs. That we have a system of creating wealth, that we incentivize businesses to one day take a chance again, so that those small businesses who employ over 80% of all Canadians will take a chance and employ our youth and create opportunities for them. I'm here for the nurse who told me that she worked throughout COVID without any vaccines. And she got COVID. And even she had to rent a trailer on her lawn to make sure that she did not, that her family was protected. And she worked double shifts and she slept out in that trailer. And then after the vaccines came out, they fired her. They told her that she could not have a job anymore. And she told me that when she looked in the mirror in the evening after her shifts, she had indentations in her face from the mask. And these are the sacrifices that some people have made. And we have to make sure that when we put policies in place, these health policies are there to protect people. They're not based on political science. They're based on real science. And make sure that people are protected and that we do not create a system of segregation based on vaccine status. I'm here for people of faith, to make them recognize that they have a right to practice their faith. And that faith is entrenched in our Constitution, in our Charter of Rights. I want to make sure that every parent in this room knows that they have a right to raise their children in accordance with their values without government interference. As I said before, I don't know where you stand on the trucker convoy, but what I can tell you is that the coverage of it erodes our trust in the media. When we heard about acts of sedition, and later on we saw that only charges of mischief were laid, that undermines the trust in our institutions. When the Emergencies Act was enacted, was utilized to confiscate people's property, to freeze bank accounts, it erodes our trust in the institution of government, and we must work to restore that trust. I had a young woman in my riding of Haldeman, Norfolk, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a rural community right beside Niagara Falls. And this young single mother had bought a trucker t-shirt for her daughter because she really wanted one. And her bank account was frozen. She couldn't pay her bills. She had no food. And this was a $20 t-shirt. When our governments acts in such a manner, it really erodes our confidence. And I've had people report to me that they are thinking about even leaving our country, this beautiful country, because of the lack of trust in our democracy. We need to make sure that the next leader rebuilds that trust in our institution. And one way of doing that is to make sure that our media is no longer an arm of the Liberal government. And to make sure that our media is no longer used as a propaganda tool, because that is what happens in dictatorship regimes. As you can see, I'm not your usual politician. I come from industry. I've taught at university, I've taught at Osgoode Hall Law School, and I've owned my own business. So I know what it means to sign the front of a paycheck rather than the back of a paycheck. I know what it means to create wealth. I know what it means to look at that 2-week period and say, how am I going to make payroll? I know what it means in 2009 when the recession was coming and I had to make sure that my employees got paid before me. And I had to make sure that I used the line of credit on my home to keep their jobs alive, because I knew that they had families that were dependent on me making sure that I give them a paycheck. So I know the realities of what it takes to create wealth, to create prosperity in this country. And right now, I see international pressures being put on this country that will change the face of what we are as Canadians. It will change the face of our meritorious society to become a socialist post-nation state that Justin Trudeau envisions. I'm here to fight against that. So I made the tough decision that I thought actually I could have both. I thought I could have my law practice and be a politician, because I trained lawyers. There were lawyers in my law firm. But as many of you know or if you know somebody who is a small business owner, your business becomes your brand. And many people, they still wanted to hear from me. They still wanted me to work on their case. And so I had to make a decision to sell my firm. And even the building that my law firm was in, I owned the units in that building, and I sold it because I did not want to be double-minded in doing this. I wanted to give every fiber of my being to saving my country, because I know that my country's in peril. My dream for Canada is that we can bring back a Canada where we could have a diversity of opinion, where we are not afraid to show that we're people of faith, or if you're not of faith, that you have the equal right to raise your children in accordance with your values and practice your faith. Where we can have a dream of prospering, developing our natural resources while protecting the environment. Every day we import over 500,000 barrels of oil a day, yet we have the third largest accessible oil reserves on the planet. We have the capacity to be self-sufficient. During COVID, we should not have had to depend on foreign countries to send us masks and gloves. We have the capacity to produce those products ourselves. We need to bring our supply chains home. We need to start producing more than we're consuming. And we need to become an independent and self-sustaining and free nation. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Lewis. And so we now want to enter a session of questions and answers. I'm sure a lot of you have burning questions on your heart that you'd like to ask Dr. Lewis, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. So I know a lot of you probably have questions, so I will be moderating this Q&A. Please just raise your hand. Hopefully, he's eager. Hopefully you'll have a chance to get your question asked, and if you don't get a chance, then you will have an opportunity to meet her afterwards and hopefully be able to ask your question in person. So without further ado, we'll just start with this individual right here.
Happy to Dr. Lewis. We're so excited you're running again in the current rules and procedures for the leadership race. It says every electoral district will be allocated 100 points or 1 point per vote cast at that stage, whichever is less. I think this change is really going to help you. Can you comment on that?
Yes, that's a great question. So I'm just going to repeat the question. Every electoral district is allocated 100 points or 1 point per vote. So in the last leadership race, it didn't work like that. So if there were 5,000 people in a riding and 20 people in another, even if I won the riding with 5,000 people, I would only get 100 votes. And the person who won with 20 people would still get 100 votes. Now things will change. The 5,000 member riding will get 100 votes, but the one with 20 will only get 20 votes. So what happened is, in the last leadership race, I won the popular vote, but I didn't win the leadership because of that allocation. So this gentleman is right that the new rules will benefit me more.
Yeah, no offense, but are you running to be the leader of the opposition with its attendant perks or the PM? One entails preaching to the choir, and I'm one of the members, and a few other members are here. The other involves going out to a nation waiting for the good news. Now, I believe, and I'm one of them as well, like yourself, an immigrant, I think there are a lot of unreached natural conservatives. So unless you, or whoever's going to be the leader of the party, reaches them, and not just the choir, and I understand you need to reach the choir to be the nominee, but unless we reach them, you will be comfortably sitting in a seat of the opposition. And this isn't perhaps the right venue, but I would like to hear your plan, not your vision, not your dream, because that's a what. I'm interested in the how, and maybe that's a little too broad here, but perhaps you could touch on it. Thank you.
No offense taken. It's a great question, actually, a very, very real and relevant question. I didn't come here for a comfortable job. I had a very comfortable, successful life as a lawyer with my own firm. I didn't want for anything. So this is really not something that I'm doing for comfort. Absolutely not. And I am prepared to do what it takes to be the next prime minister. And what you have stated is exactly what needs to be done. We do not need a leader to be in parliament and make fancy speeches and watch themselves afterwards on question period. No, we need a leader to go into the grassroots, to go into those large urban centers that we have not made inroads in, to reach out to people like yourself, like myself, like many people in this room, whose families immigrated here, who took chances, who took risks, and who have those conservative values. They have faith values, they have family values, and our party has not done a good enough job in reaching those individuals in those urban centers. I'm going to be out talking to those people, meeting them, having coffees, knocking on doors, and making sure that we make inroads in those centers that will win it and will make me the next prime minister.
Hi, thank you for coming. I'm just like the previous guy. I'm an immigrant and coming to this country and really enjoy the liberty that I enjoyed the past 8 years here. I'm also voted conservative all the way until the last election. I reside in the Lanning area, and the MP was, I can't remember her name. The reason was that. Sorry about it. I have to tell you that last election I didn't vote for you, quite frankly. Yeah, you lost about 1,000 votes, and one of them is me flipping from conservative to PPC. I'm a member of PPC as well, and one of the reasons I'm here, I just want to see how the next leader of the conservative can win us back, because I think that is a big part. And one of the reasons, another reason I'm asking this question is that in the truck convoy, one of the things they asked is a platform to come to debate the vaccine and everything about this pandemic. And what I want to ask a question is that when you have a chance, can you provide this platform so the science can be openly debated?
Yes. Absolutely. Great question. Great question. And I say to be honest with you, Maxime Bernier is a friend of mine, and we have a lot in common. So I don't have anything bad to say about him. I do find him to be a courageous person, and I have spoken out against unfair mandates from the very beginning. I'm one of the few in the party that took that really took the chance, and I paid a price for it. I wasn't given a shadow cabinet position, and it was largely because of the things that I saw. And one specific thing is when they were contemplating vaccinating 6-year-olds, and I believe that's a parental choice, and I think that they were talking about make it mandatory to go to school, and I said, with all due respect, I believe in science. I respect science, but this is a parental decision. And I came out and I spoke out against that. And because of that, people were upset with me, and it was a very courageous thing to do. And I've always believed in the fact that any kind of procedure that you endure and that you take into your body, it should be a free volition. It should be free choice to do that. Science requires debate.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thesis, synthesis, antithesis. That's the scientific, the dialectic order. Without that, it is propaganda. It is dictatorship. It is not science. And so when we do not have an open debate for science, that is problematic. I believe that all the data should be there, all of the information about the vaccines, everything should be open so that people can make a free and informed consent about their decisions. And that's what I stand for.
Thank you.
Leslyn, I really appreciate what you've been saying, and I've been a fan of yours for a long time. There's a couple issues, even though everything you said is really important, there's a couple issues that I think perhaps are more important. And I'm very concerned about, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact number, but the bill to sort of put control on the internet, I think it's Bill
C11.
C11, okay. That really troubles me because really it looks, well, I spent a lot of time studying this, and there's a lot of people that seem to think that it's really a way of controlling us and taking away our freedoms. The other one I'm really concerned about is the vaccine passport. The vaccine mandates have been taken away, but the passport hasn't. And again, the passport, the end of that, as I'm sure you probably know, is really control, to be able to know where we're going, what we do, and they're not going to let that go. And so there's going to be a real battle there. I'd like to hear your thoughts on those two things.
Yes. So the first issue, remind me what the first issue was? It's vaccine passport. C11, right. So C11, have you seen my speech on C11? I did a speech in Parliament on C11, and I concur with everything that you're saying. When the government tells us what we can see in the media, it is a form of control. When you are punching in algorithm, you're punching in search engine, search codes and words, and algorithms are popping up that the government dictates what you can see, what pops up, that is a form of control. And that is not freedom of the press. That is not your charter rights, freedom of speech, which is entrenched in the charter, freedom of association, all of those things. They're controlling what you can see. And it's very, very dangerous. I do not support Bill C11. With respect to the vaccine mandates, I always use the example, sitting in this room, we don't know who's vaccinated and who's not vaccinated. But if we went to an airport, this same group of people, some would be able to get on a plane and some would not be able to get on a plane. And so it is not based on science, it's based on political science. And we cannot have public policy that's based on political science and not science. Passports. You're absolutely right, because that's tied into they at some point in time will be advancing a universal identity, right? And that is tied into the digital identity and even the universal basic income. It is something that once you have young able-bodied people that are sitting at home and collecting a universal basic income, it's going to be a lot easier to control what they do. And all of this is tied in together. I can't stand here and deny what you're saying is not true, because it is true. The only way that we can oppose all of this movement towards this global system is by making sure that you vote for the next leader, making sure that next leader has the capacity to win a majority government so that we can turn things around.
Hi. My question is also about the vaccination. Also, I'm an immigrant. I'm from South America. It's like they try the three kind of vaccination, like Johnson, Moderna, and whatever. My country's be the most country being vaccinated, and my question is that now, like, I'm not. I agree with that, because it's like Africa and Chile, like they are those two countries that are most vaccinated, and they're the wing pig, like trying in them. And like part of my family, they are already having the side effects of the vaccinations. some of them, like my grandma passed away from that vaccination. My cousin, she's 3 years old, she got vaccinated and she was ill for 15 days. And now, like I heard, like they want to give the vaccination to kids in school. Like I'm panicking because it's like you say, we have freedom. We decide if they have to put it on or not. And
Well, I believe in personal responsibility, so I think it's important for people to do what they need to do to protect themselves, to protect their neighbors. That's a personal responsibility issue. With respect to the child vaccinations, I don't believe they're going to be mandatory. There are a lot of people who believe that that should be a choice of the parents, and so you'll have a lot of support in that. But as I said, with respect to whether or not you're vaccinated, I believe it should be based on full and informed consent.
the other second question is, I don't know if you got to be aware, this situation happened in 1918, 100 years ago. In 1918, there was a pandemic about the flu, the Spanish flu.
Yes.
What happens? In that time, the technology was not like people we have like up now. Like, so people were panicking in that time, but they say every 100 years they will do it. And what happens now, 2019, again, with another pandemic, is to control and to get rid of people. That's what the government's trying to do, every world, in the whole world.
Well, let's hope that we get through it. It's been a very traumatizing 2 years, and I think that we have to be on a path to healing and to hope.
I'm a social conservative, and you are, and I really appreciate what you're bringing to this leadership race. You have my vote.
Thank you.
But I know a lot of other social conservatives who are considering voting for Pierre Poilievre because they feel he is more electable in the general population. So my question for you is, what would you say to that person? And maybe you can give me a couple of reasons why you are more electable than Pierre.
Well, thank you.
I ask this as your supporter.
Thank you so much. Well, I remember speaking to Pierre before I decided to put my name in, and I said to him, I just want to hear about your platform. And he was great on the finance aspect. On other issues, he just didn't have a lot of concern about those issues. And I feel that in order for us to win, and in order for us to keep our conservative family together, we're going to have to appeal to the fiscal conservatives, the social conservatives, the libertarians, and the PCs. Everybody has to have a voice within the party. And based on what I've seen, and Pierre's a good man, but he believes that in order to win, you cannot be a social conservative. I want to prove him wrong. I believe you can be a social conservative. Not only that, we have different life experiences. Pierre has been in Parliament his entire life. I have a history of working my way up, building a business, creating wealth, employing people, teaching at university. I have a diverse education. I have a master's of environmental studies, a PhD in international law, and I only say these things so that you can understand the wealth of experience and education that I will bring to this role. I have had people come up to me and say, I'm pro-choice, and I can't believe that I can identify with you even though you say you're pro-life. And that is because I start from the perspective of building bridges and uniting. If you notice the differences in our campaign style, you've never heard me speak ill of any of my colleagues in this race. It is one thing for a conservative to vote for you, but it's another thing to be able to go in the urban centers to speak to liberals who, like my parents were ultra conservative in their values, but they voted liberal. And that is a reality. There are many liberals who have conservative values. What you have to ask yourself about electability, do you see that liberal person voting for Pierre, or do you see that liberal person voting for someone like me, who is a unifier and a bridge builder, and who has the education and the experience that can elicit that level of confidence in that person?
One of the aspects of your plank, if I can call it that really interested me when I first heard of you was your climate expertise. Now, this is a major issue for the population, for the world internationally, particularly bearing in mind the United Nations report that came out just last year on the impact of climate change. Now, we're recognizing through the Ukraine war the absolute present need yet of fossil fuels. We have a lot of it. You've talked about it. We know it. We know where it is. We're not using it because we're holding off because of the climate ideology that is out there saying we cannot use it. How can you bridge that gap, which to me is one of the major hurdles between the people, not only in this country but throughout the world?
Well, I think it's very important that we speak about the climate and the environment in a manner that it's truthful and not just from the state of virtue signaling and propaganda. Because of my Master's of Environmental Studies, I actually have concrete facts and information. Much of our policy is based on hypocrisy. If we are importing 500,000 barrels of oil a day, then that means that we still have the need to use that resource. If we have the need to use that resource, why is our resource less than a foreign resource? That's the question that we have to ask. Why is our oil inferior? Why do we have legislation to penalize companies in Canada? Bill C-48 and Bill C-69 actually favors foreign oil and foreign investment over our own. It's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. And if we actually care about the environment, and if we're not using fear, because this is what I'm seeing, is that our environmental policy is based on conjuring up fear so that we can impose unjust taxation on people. And that falls on the back of the least able to afford. It falls on the back on the average Canadian who has to go to the pump and pump gas, who has to heat their homes. And this is not a sustainable environmental policy. A sustainable environmental policy will have confidence in businesses to incentivize them to find innovative solutions. Many of these businesses, they will discover technologies that will reduce emissions. Many of our farmers are planting crops that sequester carbon, but they don't get credit for it. But yet they still have to pay an increased carbon tax on drying their crops. That cost trickles down to us in food costs. So a lot of what we're doing doesn't make sense. Many of the regimes, many of the jurisdictions that have the highest carbon tax have not seen a reduced emissions. Donald Trump came out of the Paris Accord, completely came out of the Paris Accord, and met all of the targets, all of the environmental climate targets. We were in the Paris Accord, and we did not meet our targets. So a lot of this is virtue signaling. I think the environment is far too important to play partisan politics and to virtue signal and to not have strong, concrete policies that allow us to develop our natural resources while protecting the environment.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, for your answers. I've been a pastor in the region for 24 years. Closer? Okay. I know there's a lot
I
of
put
other
it too
pastors
close
here as
sometimes.
well. Okay, yeah. As you're aware, and many in the room are aware, there's been about 4 or 5 pastors arrested in the last year and a half, 2 years. Now we have legislation criminalizing, our beliefs and hindering, actually making criminal our faith and what we believe, what we stand for, telling us who we can actually talk to and who we can't talk to, and what we can share and what we can't share with our congregations and with people of faith. How would you respond to the new legislation, C4, and these things that are really making a big impact on the faith community, but in particular Christians?
Yes, so first I want to say that with C4, as legislators, I think our job is to make sure that the best law is passed. And we did not do that. Because what you need to do is you actually should take the law through every level, every step, to make sure that whether you're for the piece of legislation or you're against it, to me is irrelevant. What we need to do, what we're elected to do, what we're paid to do, is scrutinize that legislation and to make sure that when it's enacted, it is the best law. And we did not do that. And for that, I say, I offer my apologies to that. There's a whole process of what transpired. I don't want to go into it right now. But what I can do is look to the future. I have been communicating with pastors. I've had conversations with Stockwell Day about this, who introduced me, and that was one of the first things that he spoke to me about, to clarify what happened and how we're going to make sure that pastors are not targeted, and also to make sure that parents don't face a 5-year jail term if they have conversations, loving conversations with their children. We have to remember that adolescence is one of the toughest times for children, and the hallmark, one of the most important things to a parent, is to be able to usher their children through to that stage of adulthood. And they do not need any deterrence on them. They do not need a law hanging over them that could really bind their hands to the point where they are walking on eggshells in making sure that they're there for their children and they're offering them loving advice to assist them with their problems. So I will let you know that I am committed to making sure that there are no inadvertent consequences and unintended consequences from C4, and I will work with pastors to make sure that this law does not limit their ability to pastor over their flock.
Hi, Leslyn. It's good to be here and hear you speak. My question is about the CBC and the media. Should you win the leadership of the party, Rosemary Barton and friends will try to tar and feather you, will misrepresent you, will lie about you, as will most of the mainstream media. So my question to you is, one, how will you deal with that? And secondly, will you dare to speak to rebel media, or will you run away?
Well, I think history answers that question. There was some sort of block between our party speaking to Rebel a few years ago. And in 2020, when I ran for the leader, to be honest with you, Ezra was the person who came out first for me, and that's where I did my very first interview on Rebel Media. And surprisingly, like I said, courage is contagious. After that, other conservatives started to do interviews with Rebel Media. So Rebel Media has actually been a friend to me. Rebel Media had the courage to feature me when I was not known in the conservative circles, and I credit that to one of the reasons why I was able to get myself out there and known and win the popular vote. So yes, I would continue speaking with Rebel Media because they're my friends. And with respect to the CBC, you're right. We're giving them $1 billion a year. And it's not just the CBC. A lot of legacy media is adopting this propaganda narrative and not really covering the news. They are they're giving their opinions on certain issues, and it's always a radical left opinion. And so, yes, I would defund it. I would defund the CBC.
Dr. Lewis, it is a delight to hear any politician speak as candidly as you do. I'm a semi-retired professor of political science who has a question and a suggestion. The question is this: as you know, in Canada, the federal government has responsibility for canals, railways, pipelines that are interprovincial. We do not have a pipeline to Eastern Canada because the Quebec government didn't like it. That's one reason we cannot now supply oil and gas to Europe. So I'd like you to comment on that. Would you be willing to use the federal power? And then I have a suggestion. You probably have many slogans. I'll give you another. Trudeau must go.
I agree with you. Yes, so I think that we must always look to act in the best interest of our national growth and prosperity. And so if it came down to it, yes, I would do whatever it takes to make sure that I put my country first. And that includes building the pipelines. But we also have another route. We could actually go up through Churchill to Hudson's Bay, and we could get our product to Tidewater that way. So that's another option instead of going through Quebec that we could entertain.
Dr. Lewis,
Yes.
thank you for coming, and good to hear everything. And I would just like to say that I'm also an immigrant. We are all immigrants to Canada. And the thing about that is it wasn't me, it was my parents, but we all came for a new chance at prosperity, and that's why we love this country, or at least the country before 2015. What I'd like to know is, if you become leader, and will you push for free votes in Parliament, because MPs represent their community, and their community, let's say Chilliwack or Abbotsford, those people put them in that office and they cannot speak what their constituents want because of the party whipping. If they would just get rid of the whip, except for financial or fiscal reasons, then they could speak their mind and say what their constituents actually voted them in for locally.
Absolutely. That is a cornerstone of our democracy. No MP should have to vote against their conscience or their constituents. And so, as you said, you're very astute on politics. For fiscal issues, you vote with your party. But on issues of conscience, there would be absolutely free votes. And even some fiscal issues are borderline, because the carbon tax is something that could be deemed a fiscal issue. And I can tell you that in my riding, where it's a rural riding with farmers, if I voted for the carbon tax, they would make sure I am out of there. So that would be voting against my constituents. And even though it's a fiscal issue, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Very good. So unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up there because we do want to leave some time. Yeah, you'll be able to ask her in person. So yeah, we want to leave some time for people to be able to meet her in person and take pictures with her. I will be playing the job of bad cop just because generally people swarm her, so we'll try to cycle people through as fast as possible. But before we do so, I do want to make a pitch and encourage everyone here to get a Conservative membership. You can do that by scanning this IQ code. There's both becoming a member and donating. Tours are very expensive. Running a leadership campaign is very expensive, and there's a lot of people here. I'm sure some of you have some extra dollars to spare to help Dr. Lewis become the next Prime Minister. And with regards to memberships, it was told to me recently that it's 0.02% of Canada's population that determines who the leader of a party is, and it will logically follow who will be the next Prime Minister. So there's a lot of people in this room, probably close to 600 people, probably not quite 0.02% of Canada's population, but probably quite close. So if you liked what you heard today from Dr. Lewis, and I think you have, and you sounds like you're very concerned with the state of our country as well, and you want to affect change, this is the one place you can get involved in politics. You can make a difference. You can go home tonight, sign up 5 of your friends and family, and we can get this person as leader of the Conservative Party who can clean up the mess there and then clean up the mess that is our nation right now. So please do your part. Please become a member. We have some lovely people at the back who would be happy to sign you up. But you can also do that just by scanning this QR code. You only need to be 14 years of age to be able to become a member, and you only need to be a permanent resident. So I see some gray hairs here. You probably have lots of grandchildren. Sign them up as well. So we really have an opportunity here to change the direction of our nation, and we all know we need it. So yes, please do that. And with regards to donations, once again, the maximum you can donate is $16.75. And once again, I would be lying if I would not like each of you to donate the max so that we can win this thing. So thank you very much, and please take a moment to come introduce yourself to Dr. Lewis. But like I said, keep it quick, get your photo, and skedaddle. Thank you.